Brittany Lopez, you're under arrest for credit card fraud and identity theft, the detective announced, pulling out handcuffs in the middle of my in-law's 30th wedding anniversary party. 50 guests watched in shock as I was handcuffed at the dining table, my sister-in-law Rachel standing nearby with the most convincing look of surprise on her face. But I knew the truth. She had orchestrated this entire scene to frame me for the $85,000 she had stolen using my credit cards. Hey everyone! If you're watching this, please hit subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me tell you the story of how a normal family celebration turned into a nightmare, and how I discovered my sister-in-law had been deceiving everyone for 3 years with $300,000 in debt. It was supposed to be a joyful celebration. Brandon's parents, Margaret and Robert, were celebrating 30 years of marriage with a backyard party at their Lincolnwood home. White tents, catered food, a live band playing soft jazz. They had spared no expense for this milestone. I had spent the morning helping Margaret set up, arranging flowers, making sure the champagne was properly chilled. Brandon was manning the grill with his father, and Rachel, my sister-in-law, was playing the perfect daughter, greeting guests and taking photos. Everything seemed perfect. Too perfect. We were just about to cut the anniversary cake when I noticed 2 men in suits approaching through the side gate. They didn't look like party guests. They looked official, serious, and they were scanning the crowd. "Brittany Lopez!" one of them called out, holding up a badge. My heart sank. "Yes, that's me." "Detective James Park, Chicago PD Fraud Division," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent backyard. "You're under arrest for credit card fraud, identity theft, and money laundering." The band stopped playing. Conversations ceased mid-sentence. 50 pairs of eyes turned to stare at me. "There must be some mistake," I said, standing up from my seat. "I haven't—" "Ma'am, please put your hands behind your back," the second detective said, pulling out handcuffs. I looked at Brandon, expecting him to say something, to defend me, to tell them this was ridiculous. But he just stood there, frozen, a look of confusion on his face. "Brittany," Margaret gasped, her hand over her mouth. "What's happening?" "I don't know," I said truthfully, as the cold metal clicked around my wrists. "This is a mistake." That's when I saw Rachel. She was standing by the dessert table, and for just a split second, a fraction of a moment, I saw something flash across her face. Not surprise, not shock, satisfaction. "Officers, please," Robert stepped forward. "This is our anniversary party. Can't this wait?" "I'm afraid not, sir," Detective Park said. "We have a warrant for her arrest. Multiple victims have filed complaints about fraudulent charges totaling over $85,000. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I heard whispers. 85,000? I can't believe it. She seemed so nice. "This is insane," I protested as they led me through the backyard. "I haven't stolen anything. Check my records, check my accounts." "We did, ma'am," Detective Park said quietly. "That's why we're here." As they walked me past the shocked guests, past the uneaten cake and the wilting flowers, I caught Rachel's eye again. This time she looked away quickly, but not before I saw it clearly. She knew. She knew exactly what was happening. And in that moment, standing there in handcuffs at my in-laws' anniversary party, humiliated in front of friends and family, I realized something horrifying. This wasn't a mistake. This was planned. The question was, how long had Rachel been setting me up? I grew up in a Mexican immigrant family in East Los Angeles. My father was a construction worker. My mother cleaned offices at night. We weren't wealthy, but my parents always taught me one thing. You must always be honest and hardworking. Your reputation is all you have. When I was 8 years old, I watched my mother return $20 that the cashier at the supermarket had accidentally given her as extra change. "But Mum, we need the money," I whispered. "Mija," Mum said, "money earned dishonestly is dirty money. It will bring trouble. Those words stayed with me my entire life. In high school, I worked more than one part-time jobs to save for college tuition. I studied hard, never cheated on tests even when other students did. When I received a full scholarship to UCLA, my mother cried with pride. "You've proven that the right way always wins," she said. But now, standing in a cold interrogation room at the Chicago police station, I wondered if that was still true. They left me sitting in the interrogation room for 2 hours before Detective Park returned with a thick file. "Mrs. Lopez," he said, opening the file, "we have evidence of 47 fraudulent transactions across 4 different credit cards in your name. Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth Avenue, Bloomingdale's, Designer Shoe Warehouse. Total of $85,247. "I didn't make any of those transactions," I said. "Someone stole my identity." "That's what we thought at first," he said. "But then we got this." He pushed a stack of photos across the table. Security camera footage. I looked at them and my blood ran cold. It was Rachel. Clearly Rachel at each store, using credit cards, forging signatures. "But that's not me," I said. "That's my sister-in-law, Rachel." "We know," Detective Park said. "She's the one who reported you." The world seemed to spin. "She reported me?" "She came to the station 3 days ago. Said she'd discovered you were running a credit card fraud ring. That you'd admitted it to her and threatened her family if she told anyone." "That's a lie!" I nearly shouted. "She's the one who stole my cards. She's the one who made those transactions." "Then why do the signatures match yours?" he asked. "Because she forged them. She lived in my house. She had access to all my documents." Detective Park held up his hand. "Mrs. Lopez, I believe you." I stopped mid-sentence. You believe me?" "We checked your financial records. You earn $75,000 a year, have steady savings, pay your bills on time. There's no motive for you to commit fraud." "Then why?" "Because we need your help," he said. "Rachel put on a very good performance. She came here first, established her story. If we just let you go, she'll know we're onto her and disappear." I began to understand. "What do you need me to do?" "We want you to help us build a case against her. We believe she's done this to multiple other people, not just you. But we need evidence." If you're finding this story interesting, please hit like and subscribe to see more engaging content. When my lawyer, Janet Barker, arrived at the police station, we sat down to make a plan. But first, I needed to understand how things had gotten this far. I met Brandon 3 years ago at a medical conference in downtown Chicago. He was an emergency room doctor. I was working for a law firm specializing in healthcare law. We met at the coffee station, talked about the challenges of the healthcare system, and before I knew it, we were dating. Brandon was kind, caring, always put family first. Maybe that was the problem. He cared too much about family. Rachel moved in with us 6 months after we got married. She had just graduated from Northwestern with a marketing degree and was finding her path. Brandon convinced me to let her stay just a few months until she found a job. Those few months turned into 2.5 years. At first, I noticed small signs. My perfume bottles emptied faster than expected. Clothes moved in my closet. A bracelet disappeared, then reappeared. "You're imagining things," Brandon said when I mentioned it. "Rachel's not like that." But then came the day I came home early and caught Rachel in our bedroom, holding my grandmother's pearl necklace, the only thing I had left after she passed away. "Brittany, I'm so sorry," she cried. "I just wanted to borrow it for a party. The clasp broke." I forgave her. That was my first mistake. A few weeks later, my Louboutin heels disappeared. Then a red dress. Then jewelry. Each time Brandon said, "You just misplaced it," or "Rachel wouldn't do that." But she did. And much more than that. With the help of private investigator Marcus Turner that Janet hired, we began tracing Rachel's activities over the past 3 years. What we discovered was staggering. Rachel hadn't just used my credit cards. She had opened 6 different credit accounts in my name. She had borrowed money from payday loan companies, using my information and forging my signature on co-signer agreements. She had even rented a studio apartment in Gold Coast for $4,000 a month, using my forged income documents to qualify. Most dangerous? She had made me a co-signer on multiple short-term high-interest loans, 400% annual interest. On paper, I was legally responsible for all of this debt. Total debt, $347,000. And legally, I was on the hook as guarantor for most of it. How did she get away with this for 3 years? I asked Marcus. She was very careful, he explained. She started small, $50 here, $100 there. When you didn't notice, she got bolder. She knew your schedule, knew when you checked mail, knew when bills arrived. She intercepted mail, redirected statements, changed billing addresses. But the signatures, she practiced. Marcus handed me a stack of documents. We found this in her apartment trash. It was dozens of sheets of paper with my name written over and over hundreds of times. My signature practiced until it was perfect. What about Brandon? I asked. Did he know? Marcus was quiet for a moment. We found text messages between Brandon and Rachel from 2 months ago. She told him she was having financial difficulties and needed help. He asked if you could lend money. She said not to tell you because you wouldn't understand. So Brandon knew Rachel had money problems, and he kept it secret from me. 2 weeks after the arrest at the anniversary party, Margaret called. Brittany, dear, her voice trembled. Can you come to dinner? We need to talk as a family. I knew what this was. This was their chance to ask me to drop charges, forgive Rachel, act like nothing happened. But Detective Park needed me there. We needed Rachel to confess, in an environment where she felt safe. So I agreed. When I arrived, the whole family was gathered. Margaret and Robert, Brandon and Rachel, looking small and sweet in an oversized sweater. Brittany, Margaret began. We've been talking with Rachel. She says this is all just a big misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, I repeated flatly. Yes, Rachel said, her voice weak. Brittany, I never meant to cause you trouble. It's just... I got into debt and panicked and didn't know what to do. So you framed me, I said. No, I thought if the police thought it was you, I'd have time to figure out how to pay it back. $347,000, I said. That's the total. Not just the $85,000 they arrested me for. The entire $347,000. The room went silent. 300, Margaret whispered. The Gold Coast apartment, the BMW, trips to Paris and Barcelona, all with money stolen from me. I pulled out the file Marcus had prepared, receipts, bank statements, photos from Rachel's Instagram showing her lavish lifestyle, all time-stamped matching the fraudulent transactions. Rachel, Robert said, his voice shaking. Is this true? Rachel looked around the room, realizing she was cornered. Then she did something I never expected. She dropped to her knees in front of me. Brittany, please, Rachel cried, tears streaming down her face. I know I did wrong. I'll do anything to make it right. But right now, only you can save this family. She was right. With my lawyer's salary and savings, I could pay this debt. I could prevent the loan sharks from coming after Brandon's parents with their harassment tactics. You're the only one with enough money, Rachel continued. I know you're kind-hearted. I know you can't let Brandon's parents face these debt collectors. Everyone looked at me with hopeful eyes. Brandon's parents, who had always been good to me. Brandon, the husband I still loved despite everything that had happened. And Rachel kneeling before me, finally showing some remorse. But it wasn't real remorse. It was just desperation. I stood there in long silence, feeling the weight of the decision. I could forgive one more time. I could save this family. I could be the hero, or I could choose self-respect. No, I said, my voice calm and clear. No one spoke. The entire room was shocked by my answer. "What did you say?" Rachel asked, as if she couldn't believe her ears. "I said no," I repeated, stronger. "I will not pay your debts. I will not save this family. I will not continue to be the person who cleans up the consequences of your actions." "But Brittany," Margaret said, her voice full of desperation. "We'll be harassed by these debt collectors. They'll sue us." My heart ached. I loved Brandon's parents, but I couldn't continue destroying myself to save people who refused to take responsibility. "I forgave once," I said, turning to face the entire family. "When I first discovered Rachel stealing from me, I chose tolerance. I believed in the possibility of change. I believed in family." I paused, taking a breath. "But you took advantage of my kindness. Rachel continued stealing, lying, and finally even framed me for her crimes to protect herself. Brandon knew and didn't stop it, and all of you assumed I would always be here to clean up the mess." I walked toward the door. "Rachel, you created this problem. You solve it. Brandon, you chose your sister over your wife. Now live with the consequences of that choice." "Brittany, don't go." Brandon stood up. "We can work this out. We can fix this." I turned back to look at him. The man I had spent 3 years of my life with. The man I had trusted with all my heart. "Brandon, some things can't be fixed," I said. "And some people don't deserve a second chance." I looked around the room one last time. "I don't owe this family anything," I declared. "I only owe myself. I owe myself a life where I don't have to constantly forgive people who have betrayed me." And with those words, I walked out the door, out of the house, out of the family that had taken me for granted for too long. Behind me, I heard Rachel sobbing, Margaret pleading, but I didn't turn back. I had made my choice. 1 week later, debt collectors showed up at Brandon's parents' house. Not 3 people, but 5, representatives from different payday loan companies, all holding contracts with my forged signature. "We're looking for Brittany Lopez," the leader said. "She's the co-signer on these loans. Total of $73,000 plus interest." Margaret called me, her voice panicked. "Brittany, they say you signed as guarantor for Rachel. They say if we don't pay within 48 hours, they'll sue you and our whole family." "That's not my signature," I said calmly. "Rachel forged it. I have lawyers and investigators proving that." "But dear, they're threatening us. They say they'll seize assets, sue the whole family." "That's illegal harassment tactics, Margaret. Give them my lawyer's number. Janet will handle it." "Brittany, please." "I'm sorry, Margaret, but I've made my decision." I hung up, and for the first time in years, I felt relief. Janet worked efficiently. Within a week, she had proven all my signatures on co-signer agreements were forged, filed police reports for identity theft and fraud, demanded the loan, companies stop harassment and pursuing the wrong person, protected my credit score and assets. The payday loan companies, faced with evidence of forgery and threat of litigation, backed down. But they still needed their money, and the only person legally responsible was Rachel. Brandon's parents didn't lose their house, but they faced the truth that their daughter had caused irreparable damage to many people, and they had chosen to protect Rachel instead of doing the right thing. In the following weeks, things moved quickly. Rachel was officially arrested on 23 counts of fraud, identity theft, document forgery, and money laundering. Detective Park discovered she had done this to at least 4 other people before me, friends, former roommates, even an ex-boyfriend. Brandon's parents didn't lose their house, but they faced mental and social consequences. Neighbors found out. Friends distanced themselves. The family reputation was destroyed for having raised and protected a criminal. Brandon tried to contact me many times. Flowers, handwritten letters, even showing up at my office. But I had changed. The woman who loved him died the day he stood there and let me be arrested without saying a word. I filed for divorce after 1 month. Brandon didn't contest it. Rachel's trial took place 6 months later. I sat in the courtroom and watched her led in wearing handcuffs, dressed in the orange prison uniform. She looked very different from the beautiful, confident girl who once lived in my house. When the prosecutor asked if I had anything to say, I stood up. "Rachel didn't just steal my money," I said. "She stole 3 years of my life. She stole my trust. She tried to steal my freedom by framing me for her own crimes." I looked directly into her eyes. But what she couldn't steal was my self-worth. And today, justice is served. The judge sentenced Rachel to 3 years in Cook County Correctional Facility, plus 5 years probation and a restitution order for the full $347,000. As they led her away, Rachel turned back to look at me one last time. No tears this time, just acceptance. She was finally facing the consequences. Thank you for following this story to the end. Let me tell you about my life after that decision. 1 year has passed since I left Brandon's family. I moved to a 1-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park, near Lake Michigan. Much smaller than the house I shared with Brandon, but it's completely mine. I got promoted at the law firm. Turns out, standing up against fraud and refusing to be intimidated impressed the partners. Now I earn $120,000 a year and lead the firm's fraud prevention department. Rachel is serving her sentence at Cook County. I heard she's working in the prison library and attending rehabilitation programs. I hope she truly changes, but that's no longer my concern. Brandon's parents? They sent an apology letter a few months ago. Margaret wrote that they didn't realize how far Rachel had gone and should have believed me. She also said they had to sell some assets to help Rachel pay part of the restitution, and life wasn't the same anymore. Too little, too late. But I appreciate the apology. What about Brandon? He moved to Boston to work at a hospital there. We haven't spoken since the divorce was finalized. Sometimes I wonder if he learned his lesson, or if he's still the man who puts birth family above everything else, even the truth. I've dated a few times, but I'm more selective now. I know the warning signs. I know my boundaries. And most importantly, I know that kindness doesn't mean letting others take advantage. Last week, I visited my mother in LA. We sat in her small kitchen, drinking coffee and eating conchas like when I was little. "Mija," my mother said, holding my hand. "You did the right thing. You know that, don't you?" "Sometimes I still wonder," I admitted. "Maybe I should have helped them. Maybe I was too harsh." "No," my mother said firmly. "Kindness doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. Kindness also means knowing when to say no." "But they almost lost their house, Mum." "They faced consequences because their daughter stole and forged your signature to commit fraud. Not because you refused to save them. Never confuse the consequences of others' actions with your fault." Those words weighed heavily on me. Mum was right. I didn't destroy that family. Rachel did. I just refused to clean up her mess. Today, I have the life I want, a job I love, an apartment that's my own, friends who value me, and most importantly, I have self-respect. I don't regret my decision. For the first time in years, I feel free. Free from always having to be the kind person, the one who always forgives, the one who always sacrifices for family. I learned something important. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences of their actions. Constantly forgiving without real change only encourages bad behavior. And sometimes, self-love means saying no to people who don't respect you. If you were in my position, what would you do? Would you choose to forgive and save the family, or choose self-respect and walk away? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear different perspectives and see how many people agree with your decision. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel to see more stories about finding the strength to set boundaries, say no, and choose yourself over people who have taken advantage of your kindness. Remember, you don't have an obligation to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Sometimes self-love is the most courageous act you can perform.